Hello everybody, welcome back to the Sleep Talks and Discussion series. In this episode, going over something that is a little bit interesting, in a sense that it's more opinion than anything else. This is not necessarily hardcore fact, but I just kind of wanted to discuss my personal playstyle while you'll never see certain strategies on the channel. Because this video is all about 5 strategies that I personally do not like, but I know are good. And that really just comes down to a matter of playstyle, a matter of what I enjoy planning for and arranging on teams. But there are strategies out there that I personally do not use because of the playstyle that I have designed on my teams and the way that I like to play the game. But these are strategies that I recognize are good, and I can see the value in them, but I personally will never use them for various different reasons. Now, it's probably just me talking to the camera because I don't really have much to show in terms of way to quantify these things. But so you're just gonna get to see a lot of my face today. You're gonna get to see a lot of my face and hear a lot of my voice in this video. But first thing that I want to discuss, and this is the primary. This is one that I've talked about a lot before, and that is the whole concept of the mono ingredient meta. I think that mono ingredient specialists are valuable and useful in terms of this game. I think that it's too heavily focused on in the community, though. And that being that, I think that the real strength in mono ingredient specialists is being able to use them for just a little bit, get them on the team, swap them off, get the ingredients that you need, and then you use that for the meal, and then that's it. I have a playstyle that is more conducive to putting a Pokemon on the team for like a little bit on a week prior to an event, prepping the bag, and then using those ingredients in the next week. And I like to keep the same team relatively static for the course of a week, rarely swapping members off, in order to truly play into the mono ingredient meta, where every single ingredient specialist should be a mono ingredient specialist. You really need to be swapping those team members around quite a bit. You need to be managing your ingredient bag very intensely, and it is the strongest way to use ingredient specialists. I will say that, because you're putting them on the team for the least amount of time, where you're managing it so that you can have those other slots be open for skill specialists or berry specialists. You can consistently and reliably make the best meals. It is the most power creep proof in a way that if you're making your teams based around, oh, I can make this meal with these 2 ingredients on this ingredient specialist, if that meal is then power creeped, then your ingredient specialist is kind of useless now. I mean, power creep doesn't really exist in this game in the traditional sense. Like, yes, power creep exists, but it's not going to retroactively make your team weaker, because they're not going up against the new power creep options in competition, kind of like how there is in competitive Pokemon. If you have an old option, like let's say, I know that one of the big things was like Landorus Therian versus Incineroar. One of the things that kind of led to the decrease of Landorus Therian was the introduction of Incineroar, because they kind of did the same thing. Well, in that situation, Landorus Therian's now like competing against Incineroar in like going head to head. In this situation, you're making a meal and you're not competing against the new option. So even though it's more power creep proof, I personally choose to not use the mono ingredient meta, because even though I know that my strategy is more susceptible to power creep, I personally find that more fun, more entertaining. And the fact that I don't have to be swapping around my team members so often, the fact that I don't have to be managing the bag as much to make sure that I always have that minimum requirement to make like X number of meals, I find that to be simpler and more fun for me personally. And I think that the community focuses on it too much, because I think that a lot of people don't use the mono ingredient build because they hear that mono ingredient's strong. And I don't think a lot of people use that mono ingredient build the way that the theory intends. I think that other strategies are much more conducive to the casual play that a lot more players use. than what the mono ingredient build really is. So while I understand that the mono ingredient meta is very strong, I think that playing completely into it is a strategy that you'll never see on this channel. You'll never see me do, because it's just not the way that I enjoy the game. And I think that other playstyles are more conducive to a lot of players' strategy. Now, the second one is cooking power up on a Monday morning. This is one that, once again, and it kind of comes down to swapping the team around. I don't like my preparation. My preparation is very much so focused on getting the ingredients for a meal that is useful throughout the course of the next week, and trying to reliably make that meal across the whole week, using primarily berry specialists with supplemented by an ingredient specialist or two. Cooking power up on a Monday morning, this whole concept is that you run cooking power up Pokemon on Saturday, Sunday. Maybe longer, maybe less time if you have better cooking power up Pokemon. And then on Monday morning, because you have one big meal on breakfast that Monday morning, you then swap in your Dedennes on Sunday night to then proc their skill. Proc their skill as much as you can before you make that Monday morning meal. So that way you can get a really high % crit chance, and then you make one big meal and hope to crit. I recognize the strength in this strategy. It gives you a lot of strength right away early in the week, which is the best time to get Snorlax strength. But my big problems with it are, I personally like other forms of carrying over strength more, even if they are weaker. That being primarily berry bombing. I think it gives an interesting, unique usage of the legends, which are more interesting. It's a more interesting build in my mind. And then also, I don't like how RNG dependent it is. Even if you get up to the maximum crit chance on that Monday morning thing, you only still have 90%, I believe. Maybe it's 70%. I think it's a 70% boost from based or something like that. But it's still never going to be 100% right away on Monday morning. Which, given that, that just hurts, because what if you don't get it? And you're banking on it for the course of the week. I like security in knowing that I'm going to hit the goals that I'm trying to reach. And if you're banking all of it on an 80 or 90% chance, whatever that number is, if it doesn't happen, that just sucks. And especially if you've been prepping all of these, if your preparation was designed around the cooking power-up Pokemon getting one 200 ingredient meal, yes, that's really, really potent and powerful. I'm not going to say anything against that. Even if it doesn't crit, that's really, really potent and powerful. And it's powerful because, like I said, it's across the whole course of the week. You get way more value out of Snorlax power on Monday night than you do out of Snorlax strength on Sunday night. Because you get it for Monday, for Tuesday, for Wednesday, for Thursday, for the whole week. So even though I recognize that this skill is powerful, I'm never going to be using it, because it just doesn't fit my playstyle. And it's not what I see as fun. I don't want to just gamble like that. Now, the next one, and this is more similar to how I think about the mono ingredient meta, it kind of ties into the last one. That is swapping around your Dedenne a lot. Now, Bropenings, he made a recent video about Dedenne and Dedenne's main skill, which is the extra tasty S. It is a very powerful skill, and you can use it in a way that it gives more strength comparatively with the math. There's a lot of math for it. Go check out his video on that if you want to understand exactly what I'm talking about here. But basically, the whole concept is you get more value out of the Dedenne skill the less time it procs for each one. So more skill procs doesn't necessarily mean more strength, or that much more strength. It will always give you more strength, but not as much as what you'd think. It's more about when the procs happen within the week. And because of that, if you want to use Dedenne strategically, you'll put it on for a little bit, wait for it to proc once or twice, then take it off the team until you get a crit on your meal, and then you swap it back on, wait for it to proc once or twice, take it off the team once you get a crit. Like, it requires a lot of management, a lot of thought line through that, and a lot of my strategies, once again, are based around this concept of prepping in 1 week the meals, the ingredients that you need for the next week, and a lot of that relies on the ingredients that I'm producing from my consistent teammates that are running. So if I'm swapping around the Dedenne so much, and it's all based off of when you get crits, when the Dedenne procs its skill, there's a lot of RNG that plays into that, so I'm not going to be accurately timing and being able to get those ingredients necessarily, because I don't know how long the Dedenne is going to be on that team, taking up a team slot, when comparatively I could be running one of the ingredient specialists producing the ingredients that I need for the meal that I'm looking to make, and maybe I won't prep the right amount because I'm swapping around the Dedenne too much. And also, it takes more management. That's another thing. One of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of the mono ingredient meta is because of how much management it takes. The same is true for this strategy of swapping around Dedenne. It is very strong. I can recognize the math in it, and I can see that it makes Dedenne arguably one of the best Pokemon in the game if you have the time to manage it in this way and the teams that can reliably support it. And it plays very well into the mono ingredient meta. And I guess all these points kind of go hand in hand here, in that I just don't play like that. My strategy is very different and more unique compared to what other players are doing and what other min-maxers are doing in this game. Now we're bordering ones that I think are almost more exploits. Well, this one's more of an exploit, honestly, because it's not really intended by the devs, and that is stockpile and spit up with a Drifblim. This is the reasoning why I put Drifblim as such a low-ranked Pokemon, because I don't like this strategy just from almost a moral standpoint. Not necessarily moral. It just doesn't feel right to me. And it also kind of plays into preparation as well, of what I do with my prep time. My prep time is usually spent on berry bombs. My prep time is usually spent on building up, stockpiling the ingredient bag. The whole idea of stockpile spit up on a Drifblim is that Drifblim is way more powerful if you can get to 10 stockpiles before spitting up. But you can't guarantee that's going to happen. In fact, it's very RNG dependent. And how many stockpiles you get before it spits up. And the math just shows that if you don't get the maximum amount of stockpiles before it spits up, if you just let it go and you just click it and then get the spit up whenever it happens, it's a weaker strength. Drifblim outputs a weaker strength than the other charge strength Pokemon. But there's an exploit. If you go into airplane mode at the right time before you tap the Drifblim, you can see if it spits up or stockpiles before, so that way you can then relaunch the app, and because you weren't connected to the server end, it never actually collected that skill server end, so then you can tap it again. Or if you got the spit up prematurely, you can swap one Pokemon off your team, swap them back on, not the Drifblim, because if you do that, then you lose the stockpiles. But because of that, it resets if there was a skill proc or not. So then you don't actually get the spit up if it was the spit up prematurely. I don't like this strategy because it uses airplane mode. There's a lot of steps involved there, and that's just annoying. However, it does make Drifblim a top tier if you use that specific strategy, and you consistently make it only get 10 stockpiles before it spits up. The other thing I don't like about this, though, is even though it does work and it makes it consistently output more value, you're still waiting for the Drifblim to get 11 procs throughout the course of a week before you can tap it and actually collect that proc. That leads to you're either... Maybe you won't get that all in a week. I don't know. You don't know how many procs you're going to necessarily be getting in a week. You'd have to have a pretty good Drifblim to reliably being able to collect that many procs, especially since you're canceling out some of the procs. You're making some of the procs not happen. And let's say you have a double proc on the Drifblim. If you have a double proc on it, and then you cancel out the Drifblim's skill because one of them was a spit up, then now you've lost 2 procs for getting that extra value instead of just 1 proc, as it would have been if it was a single proc. So, like, you're losing some value, but you're also gaining a lot more in the exponential value of stockpile. It's just like, I don't like it. It's good, I can see the value in it, but I don't like it, and that's the whole concept of what this video is really discussing. And the last one, and this one I'm more mixed on. I could be convinced on this one, which is why I kind of saved it for last, because it is my number 5. It's the one that I feel the weakest about, and that is Dream Shard Magnet hunting. And this is primarily relates to the Swalot. I know this has been nicknamed ratting in the past. In the Discord, I've seen infographics that nickname it that, and that is pretty much just going to finding out using the calculators and tools at what point a Pokemon, a very specific Pokemon, is most likely to spawn, or a sleep style that you are targeting is most likely to spawn at, because the way that spawning mechanics work in this game, sometimes increasing your drowsy power doesn't always increase the likelihood of encountering that Pokemon. And the whole concept behind this is that you figure out which number that is, go to that number, and then do your absolute every fiber of your being to make sure that you don't gain any more Snorlax strength, so that you can consistently get the drowsy power you need to more reliably encounter the Pokemon that you are hunting. I recognize the strength in this because it does help with hunts. You're increasing your odds, and every shot that you got at catching that Pokemon, that may be huge if you're hunting, say, like Sneasel. That may be huge for a lot of Pokemon, honestly. But I don't think I'm ever going to be doing this unless I just happen to get the right... Because it works best with Swalots. Because they're slow Pokemon, they're not going to be producing that much, they have a relatively large inventory, so it's going to be easy for you to get in there, open up the app, collect their skill triggers, swap the team, swap it back so that you clear their inventories, so that they don't sneaky snack ever, and that you're still getting the Dream Shards. That's the whole concept behind it. You're getting the Dream Shards with the Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon, while not harming yourself in that, because if you're sticking at a low Snorlax strength, you're not going to be getting that many Dream Shards, so you're going to need to get that somewhere else, so you're doing it with Swalots. Now, I recognize the strength in this strategy for hunting Pokemon. I like big numbers. I'm just going to go for the highest Snorlax strength. I think it's the simplest way to go about it, and those Pokemon are more flexible, because instead of only when you're hunting, now you can do it, you can collect Dream Shards whenever by just reaching those higher Snorlax strengths. And it has dual purpose, because you're collecting the Dream Shards in the fact that you have a high Snorlax strength just to begin with, and also now you can reach higher Snorlax strengths to be able to do well in events in the future and things like that. So I just like it more, and I'd rather not spend my skill seeds, one of the most valuable resources in the game, on Dream Shard Magnet Pokemon. I don't have an avid hate for this strategy like I do some of these other ones, because you will never see me doing the whole Dedenne swap around thing. You will never see me doing Cooking Power Up on a Monday morning. You're never going to see me using Airplane Mode to manipulate Stockpile and Spit Up. This one, I could see myself doing one day if I have extra seeds to spare and I happen to come across a good Gulpin or two. But I still don't necessarily like it. But I recognize the strength in it, and that is the whole point of this video. These are 5 strategies that are popular in the community that I recognize the strength in, but I personally will never adhere to and use, because they just don't fit the way that I play the game. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, and maybe learned something, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I always appreciate it, helps the channel out. And as always, I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.